Okay.
Hello, Miami. This is 305 Sports Now, your home podcast and channel for all things Miami sports related. I am Will, and I'd like to welcome back a special friend to the show, local 10's news anchor, actually sports anchor, Mr. Clay Ferraro. Clay, how's it going?
It is going well, my friend. I know you are getting back in the swing of school just like I am. So, between having a wife who's teaching nonstop and trying to, satisfy everything she needs to do with her kids and her class, and I'm being Mr. Mom at home as much as I can. So, we're trying to strike that balance while still getting ready for the football season and also the Miami Heat season. So yeah, we're trying to juggle a bunch of different balls at the same time, but doing it the best we can.
Yeah, the transition process isn't very easy. I'm doing the same exact thing. I have my son here at home as well who's been sick, so it's been very challenging these last couple days. All right, but so I'll get to it. I'll get to it because I know you want to be with your daughters and so on. So what we're gonna break down today pretty much is some Canes and some Dolphins. All right. As far as the Canes go and so on, last year, they had offensively they averaged 34 points a game. We saw the ascension of Tyler Van Dyke. We saw the 6 straight games of 300 yards passing and whatnot. In comes Mario Cristobal and so on, who people expect he's going to be more of a run-oriented type of coach in comparison to Manny Diaz, who wanted a more cutting-edge, exploded offense. Through your sources and so on, have you heard of anything in particular that we should be expecting from the Canes this year?
No, I think that I've been of the belief that, especially because the ACC is so down, that when you're bringing in the best quarterback in the conference, and I think by a decent amount, and you've got a lot of talent on that team, I think they should do really well. Now, I will say that the depth is going to be tested. And look, Mario Cristobal has done a fantastic job since he got to South Florida in recruiting, especially for future classes. But there was still a depth issue going into the season, and so obviously, like so many teams, it's going to be predicated on can you keep your starters healthy? And thankfully, Zion Nelson comes back on recording this on Tuesday, came back today. So that sort of thing I think is going to be really important, that they've got as much of their quality starters ready to roll and stay healthy as long as possible. Perhaps more than in years to come, when they would hopefully be able to fill the roster with high quality players from top to bottom.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that Cristobal's done is he's tried building depth because he also doesn't want his players to become complacent, in terms of the team itself. So having basically the next man up, mentality and having a solid bench. Like for example, the defense this year is set to be a lot better than it was last year, because one thing that Cristobal did is that he built up the defensive line. Bring in transfer portal guys like Lichtenstein from out of USC, Akeem Mesidor over at out of West Virginia as well, cornerbacks as well like Daryl Porter, over from West Virginia as well. So depth is the number one priority as far as player personnel goes for Mario. And you just mentioned the offensive line, Zion Nelson. The way Mario Cristobal's recruited the offensive line this season for the 2023 class, he might have an offensive line group that could rival, on paper, the future of what was the 2001 class that was just absolutely dominant based upon, what he wants to build from the old Canes and what he learned out of Alabama.
Well, and this is what we've always said about the University of Miami, is you're not going to have a problem finding skill guys. And look, you do want to get back to where you are beating Alabama and Ohio State and USC and the big schools for the best skill players and the 5-star type guys. And yet you're always going to have enough if you recruit properly at the skill spots, because even the 3-star recruit from a South Florida school that may not get the major offers, you're going to still be able to put a quality player on the field if you fill out the depth properly. The lines are key, and they've been key. And unfortunately, that's been a major problem for UM for a long time. Nobody knows that better than Mario. And it's not a coincidence that you see him out there working with the offensive line, frankly, more than any head coach I've ever seen. Now, obviously, that's where his heart is. And yet I also think that, there's a necessity to that. Like he has a way that he wants offensive linemen to play. And yeah, he was an O lineman, and yeah, that's his heart, but it also means he knows how the position should be played. And if he's able to get that fixed, and you already got the quarterback and Tyler Van Dyke, and obviously recruiting very, very well, and bringing in another QB. So, like, you can see the vision for where the floor and the ceiling for this program are raised so much simply by improving the offensive line. And once you do that, everything else is going to follow.
Yeah, in terms of the offensive line, that's one thing that Mario has really greatly emphasized on because, like I said, he likes the idea of depth. Um, from your experience covering, teams in general, not just like the Canes, but the Dolphins, transitioning from a more of a finesse line to a more physical line in general. I covered the Canes last year. Last year's line was a bit more finesse. Do you think it will be a difficult transition once game time starts, or do you think that this line, because generally from what I heard, offensive linemen love to run block more than pass protect. Do you think that this team will pick it up rather quickly?
You hope so, and you just don't know until they get out there and they play. We could sit here and give, hey, well, in my experience, I think that being able to go out there and smash the guy in front of you as opposed to taking a bucket step and dropping back and all, like, you can put all that out there, but so much of O-line play, and this is how well are you in sync with the guy next to you, and how well do you know the protection calls? I mean, how many times have we seen when an offensive line gets beat? It's, I would say, more often, not because the defensive guy who beats him is so much better than the offensive guy. A lot of times it's missed assignments. So, yeah, I mean, I think there are fewer opportunities for missed assignments that lead to bad big plays like sacks and fumbles and things like that when you're running the ball more. And yet you do have to get to a point where everybody's comfortable with that, because you don't want to put yourself in those third and long situations, because then the same sort of thing happens. You're still in a situation where you're having to pass and you don't want to. The other team knows you're passing, and then you get back to not knowing your assignment. So, I mean, theoretically, yeah, you could see a world where, because you're getting out there and being more of a power-based attack, that the offensive linemen love it, and maybe you don't have quite as many of the negative plays on first and second down, and yet you still got to do it right, or else maybe you're in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, you still have issues with that. So I'm optimistic with everything I've heard. I do think that it's a process, and we're not going to know just how far along in the process they are. And look, give credit to Mario, because he hasn't sugarcoated this thing. I mean, he's come out and he said, we're not where we need to be. And I don't think that's coach speak. I think it's, hey, this is going to be a process where we are transitioning, and we may have talented players and we have a vision for how to get there, but these are still college players, and you're not out there nonstop like NFL teams are in the offseason, where you can work hands-on with these guys. And obviously in the NFL, it's not, mini camps and stuff like that. It's not full pads all the time and going, but man, you get out there and get the mental reps. It takes time. And so I think that theoretically, yeah, the transition should be easier than if you were going from the other to the other, going from the power style to the finesse style. And yet we just won't know until they line it up, not just against Bethune, but then you get to the next couple of weeks after that, and especially A&M, I think we'll have a better idea.
Yeah, I think A&M is going to be the ultimate test for the Canes. And and a lot of people, a lot of fans that listen to this channel, they don't think A&M is that good, but I do think that Miami hasn't beaten these great teams either, the last few years. So I think A&M is an ultimate test. First of all, let's not forget that Jimbo Fisher also had the top recruiting class in the country, actually on record. So the A&M will definitely be better. The only thing I give Miami a definite advantage over A&M is the quarterback situation. Tyler Van Dyke is much better than their quarterback that they have right now in A&M. Speaking of Tyler Van Dyke and Mario Cristobal, we talked about how coach has been very honest about his assessment of the team heading into practice and heading into game one. Also, the standard in terms of practice and discipline has also increased, and we've actually heard that from the players as well. As far as TVD, and even Jafari Harvey has made comments like that. In terms of the standard, that Mario brings to the table, he was the same way at FIU. He comes from the Alabama Nick Saban coaching tree. Is it? Do you think it's difficult for some of these players to reach that kind of a standard? Because Mario is always going to want perfection. It's very difficult to have perfection. What do you think about that?
Well, you better. And you better find a way to reach that, or else you're going to have other players coming in to take your spot. And, you don't want to run this thing. And this is what's interesting. And I kind of got this vibe being out there, just asking some people around the program, just asking them what it's like. And, I got there, and You get there for practice one day, and after practice, you got all coaches and with their families hanging out and stuff like that. It's like, oh, it's this chill, laid back. But no, not at all. And so what I think Mario is doing, and this gets back to your question, he understands that you have to build a solid relationship and let these guys know that you care about them, so that when you go out there and you bust their rear end and you get onto them, they know that it's coming from the right place. And they also know that, man, we're all pulling in the same direction. We're all out here to win. And he establishes this relationship, this bond, this look, it's us against the world. But in order to win in this us against the world, I got to have you be better than the best that we've seen so far out of you. So look, is it difficult? I'm sure for some players it is. I'm sure for some players it's refreshing, especially if it's the type of player who has felt like maybe others haven't been trying quite as hard as they need to finally have somebody come in and hold them accountable. So I think that if you're going to be the best that you can be as a program, you need somebody doing that. And you need to have somebody, by the way, that does it the right way, or else you just have somebody screaming into a vacuum. Like, if you can't come in, and somebody made this comment about Jim Harbaugh years ago, and this is before he went to the 49ers from Stanford. They said, the thing that's great about Jim Harbaugh is by the time his college players are tired of him, they graduate. Whereas in the NFL, the players have to stick with him. And so I think there's a difference between just being hard on players to the point where you grind on them and they're just ready to get away from you, and doing what it appears that Mario is trying to do, which is you establish this relationship and let them know you care about them. You let them know you care about their families, that your family cares about them and their families. And so then when you yell at them, they take it the right way. And so I think he's trying to do that. I think hopefully that most players are taking that the right way. It wouldn't surprise me at all if after this year you have a mass exodus via the transfer portal by players who aren't performing up to expectations. And then when they're worked hard, they don't want to do it. And that's kind of the natural progression with the turnover when you have a new coaching staff come in like this. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure for some players it's hard. And frankly, I think for a lot of those players, it'll be their one and only year under Coach Cristobal. They'll find somewhere else to go.
Yeah, we'll see how this year goes. So far from what I've heard, the players have bought in, because you had guys like DJ Ivey's has come back. He could have gone to the NFL. He's taken a chance. Mm-hmm. He's back. Gilbert Fryerson's back. Jake Garcia didn't hit the transfer portal. So I think from what I've heard, some of the players have bought. We'll see how the season goes, and if when tough times hit, how these players react to like a beating from Cristobal, because he doesn't take anything from the players. But as of right now, from what I've heard, the players have bought in. So I think that's a positive, as far as the program goes. Because I mean, not to criticize the former coaching staff, but they felt like there wasn't accountability. To give an example, I forgot his name. The previous quarterback, the one out of Georgia, the one that lost the FIU game, he was out partying the night before. And
Jaron Williams.
Thank you, Jaron Williams. Yes, and it showed in his performance against FIU, and he wasn't suspended. And that's something.
I hadn't even heard about that.
Yeah, he was out partying the night before, and coach is not gonna tolerate that. In particular. So that it's good to see accountability. It's the way the old school Canes were. I saw Leon Searcy, the former right tackle for the University of Miami, and multi-time Pro Bowler, when he was at the Steelers and also with the Jaguars, and he said the one thing that Jimmy Johnson always said: you guys can celebrate, but don't cause penalties. And so discipline was the number one factor that made those Canes great, and Cristobal was part of that. Of those championships. So I think that's that he's just translating that over to this team as well.
Well, and you saw him come in, and one of the first things he does, he gets rid of the turnover chain. And like I was somebody, I liked the turnover chain when it was implemented, and yet I fully understand the idea that number one, it probably ran its course, and number two, what Mario is trying to let these guys know is that the work has to come before the flash. And I think there was a sense when the turnover chain came out, it was that 2017 team that was so good, went to the ACC title game, and you had a lot of veterans on that team that had kind of earned the right to have the turnover chain, and it became this thing, and that team was very, very good. And yet I think what's lost is that the turnover chain, became something that was just like kind of expected every year. And what I think Mario is trying to do is get these guys to understand once again, I don't think he's going to bring back the turnover chain, but like you can't have this like flash waiting for you and it's a bad look when you're down 40-7 and breaking out. But like you have to put in the work on the field at Green Tree, at the Sofer, and you have to be ready to rock. And then then you celebrate and do all that sort of stuff. But I mean, that's the type of mentality that I think he's trying to instill. You're right, not just the the discipline, the lack of penalties, things like that, but you got to work hard. And the hard work has to come before the celebration and the spoils. And something that Nick Saban says that I think is spot on. Nick Saban comes off as just being cranky and but one thing he always says, and you see it with him, like when he's leading his players out of the tunnel, he'll say, I work them so hard during the week that the game should be fun. And so if you're Mario Cristobal, you've worked them so hard in the spring, you worked them so hard in the fall, you made sure they were working so hard in the weight room, strength and conditioning, to where hopefully Saturday is fun. And not just this Saturday, but hopefully a lot of Saturdays this fall if you're a Canes fan.
Yeah, going back to the chain for about a split second. I actually liked the chain when it first came out. My wife gave me a T-shirt of the chain as well, so I used to wear it when I used to go to games. But it did get stale. When you're 10-0 and you're beating Notre Dame and you're beating FSU, that chain looks good. But when you're losing Alabama by basically by 25 points and you break out the chain, it looks bad. It looks more like an individual accolade more so than a team accolade. So yeah, I agree with you. I think the chain needed to be retired. With this coaching staff, and you need to start fresh. With a new mentality, new mindset, and so on. Okay, so we're done with the Canes a little bit. We'll go into the Dolphins. This is where you and I are gonna have a little bit of fun. All right. Listen, I have criticized Tua, on the air several times. It's hard because when you look at the guy, speaking of Green Tree, when you look at the guy that plays on Saturdays, TVD, and he throws a deep ball, he makes it look so easy. The first couple of years of Tua throwing a deep ball, it looked like he was throwing a shot put, so it's it's just a little bit difficult, to look at, it's not fair for Tua, compare him, to Mahomes or TVD or anything, but it is what it is. His arm strength has been a question of many scouts, of many pundits and of NFL analysts. He's looked decent in practice. And although that some guys on ESPN who just like to talk, have said that he underthrew Tyreek Hill in the last preseason game. Mind you, it's still a 55-yard pass. All right, that's not an easy pass to throw. Most of us can't throw past 35 yards. Okay. Tua had a very bad injury. Is this a result? His arm looks a little better. We saw a 65-yard pass in practice that went viral. Is this a result that maybe his hip's healing, so he's able to push more off the ball? What do you think about that?
I think it's a combination of everything. And Malcolm Gladwell's book Tipping Point kind of it basically illustrates that, like, we always look for one reason why something changes or something big happens, and usually it's a combination of a lot of things. I definitely think that's it. I also don't think that the arm strength was ever quite as bad as it had been portrayed. I will say this: I think the thing that he needs to be spot on with, and this is, I don't know if we talked about this last time, but I'm a big Saints fan. And, with Drew Brees, watching him over the years, man, the last 3 years, his arm fell off a cliff and teams played the Saints to where they knew that he couldn't throw deep anymore. But even before that, I mean, you're talking about a guy that had a massive shoulder injury. There's a reason why the Dolphins didn't bring him in, but he was still able to hit deep shots. And it wasn't because he had the strongest arm in the league. He's got a strong enough arm, but it was because his timing was ridiculous. I mean, he just had this sixth sense of when to get the ball deep, where it needed to go to, whether it was Marcus Colston or Devery Henderson or Robert Meacham, or later on Brandon Cooks. Michael Thomas wasn't just running slants back in 2016. And so I think with Tua, what often looked like a deep ball that was a lack of arm strength, I think a lot of times it's the timing wasn't there. And he has to release the ball sooner than Patrick Mahomes. He has to release the ball sooner than Josh Allen. No, he's never going to have the arm that those guys have. And that's okay. His arm is good enough. I think you can go throughout history and find plenty of quarterbacks who have won Super Bowls with an arm that was good enough. And so I think with him, what we've seen is Yes, I think the hip is better. I think he feels stronger. I think more importantly, he feels more confident, not just in his body, but also with his command of the offense. He even said that ball to Tyreek Hill the other night wasn't where he wanted it, and yet I remember this distinctly when the trade for Tyreek Hill was made. I immediately start going back and pulling video, from Tyreek Hill with the Chiefs, because I mean we got to quickly put stuff on the air and then get ready for our Sunday night show that week. I mean, there are a lot of balls where Tyreek Hill's having to come back and catch the ball from Patrick Mahomes. The guy's just really, 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 really fast. And I thought it was interesting that Kayvon Wallace over the weekend said, "Man, that guy, that's a different type of speed. I've never seen anybody that fast in my entire life." So all that to say, Tua's arm is strong enough if he gets the ball out on time, on target, and he makes the right read and gets the ball to the guy that needs to get it to. He does not have the margin for error that your Aaron Rodgers, your Mahomes, your Allens, your Justin Herberts do. But in this offense, he has the ability to be closer to perfect than he's ever been, because they're finally putting him in a position to succeed. And I know we'll get into this. A big part of that is creating a running game. And I thought that was a lot of what we saw the other night. Look, you're going up against the Eagles' backups, and yet the fact that you were able to run the ball so effectively was able to make things really, really easy for Tua in the passing game. It wasn't just Tua, it was Skylar Thompson later on. So, I think all of those things are going to make it to where Tua's arm strength, if this offense runs as it's supposed to, it's going to be a non-factor. If he puts the ball where it needs to be placed, I don't think people are going to be crying over his arm strength.
Yeah, and I think Tua's more confident because he's got a coach that believes in him.
Yep.
He had a lot of issues big issue with Brian Flores. Brian Flores also having multiple offensive coordinators, I don't think helped Tua either, because you have basically too many Chiefs and too many Chiefs and not enough Indians, so on in that regard. In regards to the running game, I think it will help out a lot. It will definitely help out a lot. They've invested in the offensive line. They've invested. I love Chase Edmonds. I liked him when he was out in Arizona. Bringing in Moser is going to make it more effective. For the audience out there that may not understand the dynamic of a solid running game, because we have a more pass-oriented league now, how much of a difference is the running game going to make, in terms of creating more efficiency for Tua?
You're talking about numbers in the box. I mean, it's, if a defense has to commit more players, or, man, we talk about the speed of not just Tyreek Hill, but Jalen Waddle. If you talk about safeties and linebackers that just have to pause for a split second because they're waiting to see what they have to do. And by the way, I thought Tua said something really interesting the other night that, if you listen to how he put it, it should kind of put a light bulb off in your head. He said, what our offensive linemen have worked really hard with is forcing defenses to read keys that aren't there. In other words, you do things to make the defense think that you're going to run after you've successfully run the ball. So all of a sudden they're on their heels. And by the way, it's not just the linebackers and safeties, it's also the defensive linemen. Like, they can't pin their ears back if you're in 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2, and you're going play action. So what Tua said is, our offensive linemen have worked really hard to try to put keys out there that the defense will misread. And they think that we're going to run the ball. Well, all of a sudden, man, that's all the time that you need for Tyreek Hill to blow by somebody. That's all the time that you need for Jalen Waddle to beat somebody off the line of scrimmage. All of a sudden, you hit him with a 12-yard pass, it turns into a 60-yard gain. So it's vital, not just for like opening up those small levels of separation for the receivers, not just the line, but also down the field, but also for Tua to have more time to do what he needs to do. Because if those defensive linemen are having to pause for even a split second before they get their momentum and start to go at him, that's all the time that you need if you're an NFL quarterback. So it's vital, and something that he hasn't had. I mean, since Tua's been in the NFL, and honestly ever since we go back to I'm blanking on who was the Dolphins running back under Adam Gase that had the 3 200-yard games.
Ajayi.
From Ajayi, Jay Ajayi.
Ajayi, sorry.
I mean, when was the last time that they had a consistent running game? And by the way, Ryan Tannehill looked pretty good when he was healthy that year, especially towards the end before. So it's not a coincidence, man. When you got the offensive line and you got the running game working, it just makes the job so much easier for a quarterback, because the defense doesn't know what's coming and they can't tee off on either the receiver or the quarterback.
Yeah, and absolutely, I completely agree with you. And I think also lost. So like the fact that Dolphins do have this year as a fullback, which many people have said is an obsolete position in the NFL. We actually have a fullback, that this could be utilized as part of the offense. And the 49er offense was very efficient in terms of running the football as well. So it's a good thing he's bringing here. I think, like I said, it'll help to create more efficient passing situations for the Dolphins quarterback. Also, what helps, and we'll move on to Mike Gesicki. Also, what helps is the fact that Tyreek Hill is not just a speed guy. He's also a guy that he could juke you. So he'll catch a 5-yard slant, and if you're out of position, he's gone. So I think that also helps Tua Tagovailoa in immense fashion. All right, so you're on Hawk and Crowder quite a bit. I love listening to Hawk and Crowder. It's a fun show. The dynamic between those two is hilarious. Let's not forget Solana. Solana's also
they're great. They're great.
Yeah, they're fantastic. But you had a very interesting take on Mike Gesicki and the whole trade rumors. Can you explain to the audience in terms of what was said? What you think should happen to Gesicki in terms of the trade, and then I'll piggyback on what you said, and we'll go have a little back and forth.
So just that if you're going to play him as a tight end, he's a tell. Like, you are not going to run the football if Mike Gesicki is lined up as a tight end at this point, because it's a lost play. And, we talk about the San Francisco offense. Nobody has George Kittle except for San Francisco. There is no more complete tight end in the NFL, somebody who is so dynamic as a pass catcher, but also just a ridiculous blocker. And yet he was a major reason why their offense was so efficient running the football. Him and Kyle Juszczyk, by the way, two guys who are dynamic both in the passing game and also in the running game. You need to be able to have a tight end who can get out there and seal and do things the right way, so that life is easy in this running game. And this Kyle Shanahan type offense, which it certainly appears Mike McDaniel is bringing over. Man, it is go up, read, go. And you find the hole and you try to take advantage, get as many yards as you can out of that. Well, if you have a tight end out there who can't block at all, it's difficult. So if that's the case, you can't put him out there as a tight end. Really, the only place that I think he would be effective is basically if you're putting him as a receiver in the red zone. And there's a value to that. I mean, by no means are you dismissing the value and having somebody who can go up and catch touchdowns. And yet, is it a $10 million value? And so I think that's the tricky part, is essentially he can't be a tight end in this offense. And if you're going to make him a receiver, you are either waiting to get in the red zone, or you're taking a ball away that you would otherwise try to find Tyreek Hill with, a ball that you would otherwise try to find Jalen Waddle with. And I think with this team, you have so many guys who are so explosive. And look, as good and athletic as Mike Gesicki is, he's fantastic. For somebody his size, he's not athletic to the level that Jalen Waddle is. He's not athletic to the way that Tyreek Hill is, in that they can make those huge explosive plays play in and play out. I think he brings a ton of value. I don't think his value is as high to the Miami Dolphins as it would be to a lot of other teams in the league. And that's where I think the idea that he could be on the trade market makes a lot of sense, because other teams would value him at a higher level, because they would need that chess piece more than the Miami Dolphins do, because not a whole lot of teams have a Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle.
Yeah. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I just think that Mike Gesicki is a freakish talent, as far as pass catching tight end goes. And I just think that when you need someone to go down the middle of the field and so on, in terms of drag routes and so on, I think that Gesicki would be your guy. The one-handed catches, are astounding. He does it in traffic. You just talked about the red zone situation and so on. So I just think that you have to find a way to keep him and find a way to utilize him in a way that makes him, more efficient in the offense. That's just my take. Because Durham Smythe is a good pass blocking. He's a good pass blocker. But as far as offense goes, he's nowhere near the skill of Gesicki, and a lot of teams now, they have a skilled tight end. You have Kyle Pitts over in Atlanta. You have Gesicki with the Dolphins. As well, you have Kelsey over with the Chiefs. So the tight end has become, especially as a receiver, has become a very important position in the NFL, especially in the pass catching format, that we have today. So that's just my take. I wouldn't trade him. I try to, unless you get like a high pick, because he's still also very young. You're getting a guy that's 25, 26 years old, and his numbers, last year were pretty. He should have more touchdowns, but they were pretty gaudy, with 73 catches, 780 yards with 2 touchdowns. So I think you have to find a way to make it work, for the
So
fans.
here's the issue with bringing up the teams that you brought up. You brought up Kansas City. Well, that's a team that had Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and receivers beyond that. There's a reason why they felt the need to go out and get somebody once they traded Tyreek Hill, because they don't have the level of pass catchers. There's a good friend of mine, one of our photographers, who's a huge Chiefs fan. And basically, as crazy as it sounds, they didn't have enough weapons. And so they had to let Tyreek Hill go because they have a quarterback who's on a massive contract, unlike the Dolphins, who have a quarterback on a rookie contract. They had to let him go because they couldn't afford to have Travis Kelce. You go out and you get Marcus Valdez-Scantling. You had the downgrade from Tyreek Hill to Valdez-Scantling because it's a salary cap league, and you needed to have another weapon there. And you don't have enough the Dolphins don't have enough footballs to go around. You bring up the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons are a bad team. I mean, terrible offensive team. And Kyle Pitts was their most dynamic pass catcher last year by far. They didn't have the other weapons. And Calvin Ridley gets kicked out of the league basically, and they feel like they have to go and draft a receiver this year because they don't have enough weapons. The common theme here is not enough weapons. Not enough weapons. Dolphins have enough weapons. They have more than enough weapons. And I'll say this, Eric Uzukama has been a bad man out there. And it's not, I mean, he pops, he flashes every time you see him. Trent Sherfield is somebody who he's going to be the gunner, but then he just seems to have this chemistry with Tua. So I think it's one of those where, and look, they cut down to 53 today. Gesicki's still on the team, and they only kept 5 other receivers. So to me, that says either they're going to try to stash Craycraft and or Sanders on the practice squad, or they're going to have Mike Gesicki play receiver. And they kept 1,000 tight ends on the right. They don't view Mike Gesicki as a tight end, and that's okay. I don't think many teams in the league do. Now, what you then have to ask yourself is it more valuable to pay him $10 million this year to basically be a red zone threat, or try to get something compensation-wise for him? And in a league where salary cap space rolls over, it's not just $10 million on this year's cap, it's potentially on next year's. So there are all these things. I don't deny he's a very good player and has a very good skill set. But when you look at the teams that you mentioned, I mean, the other great pass catching type, Mark Andrews. I mean, who else is your receiver in Baltimore? I mean, Hollywood Brown is so it's it's when you don't have enough weapons, that player becomes more important. When you have enough weapons, like the Dolphins finally do for the first time in who knows how long, all of a sudden the importance of a player like that erodes a bit, and that's when you start to look around.
Okay. All right. You made some good points and so on. I get it. Okay, I get it. But I mean, he is a talent. But you're right. I'm just afraid.
No
like I
no
don't.
doubt.
But, I mean, you mentioned these other guys, and it's true. I just don't want to see Jalen Waddle run down the middle of the field and face linebackers. That's my only thing. But you brought up a good point that they have enough receivers out there.
If you get Jalen Waddle on a linebacker, I think you're celebrating 6. I think you're pretty excited about that. But that's the thing. It's like, I don't think the Dolphins are thinking, oh, we need somebody to get us 3rd and 5. We need somebody who on 2nd and 8 is going to go 70.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
right.
so I that again, there is absolutely a lot of skill with what Gesicki brings. And yet, man, I think, and I'll go back to, again, I mentioned I'm a Saints fan. I remember when the Saints played the 49ers 2019. It was 2019. And Sean Payton came out after the game, and they lost that game. It was a game where George Kittle went crazy at the end of the game. And he said, I was on the field before the game, and I could not believe the speed that I saw on the field for San Francisco. It was jarring. And, man, that's what the Dolphins have now. Like, I mean, Mostert is ridiculously fast. Jalen Waddle is ridiculously fast. Tyreek Hill is, like, not human fast. I mean, so that's the type of offense that I think they're trying to bring. It's this explosive big play. And, again, all this may be a moot point because as we stand right now, Gesicki's a receiver on this roster. And they may ultimately decide to pivot and say, we're going to use him as opposed to putting him out there as a tight end, letting the whole world know that we're going to run the ball. Maybe we'll use him more like the Saints used to use Jimmy Graham and line him up out wide and do it like that. So Yeah, it's a debate. It's a fun one, and yeah, I can kind of see either side of it.
Okay, so I stand corrected on Mike Gesicki. You know, that's why you're the professional, and I just have a YouTube channel. All right.
No, not at all. It's look, man. That's the fun of this thing is like different points of view, and it's like, man, nobody's gonna. I think we can all agree we all want to see the Dolphins do well.
Of course,
because, man, it's good. It's good for business for us. I mean,
yeah.
it's hey, let's get an ABC playoff game. Let's get a local 10 playoff game. That would be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. But I understand what you said about Mike Gesicki, you know, and so on. I mean, you do have Tyreek Hill, you do have Jalen Waddle. And then of course, you know, but then they also have a ton of receivers, and they've drafted also some big bodies as well. So I do think Gesicki will be more or less. I think what they'll do is they'll line him a tight end in passing situations. I know it's obvious, you know, but I do think that they will line him up more as a receiver, because you also want to have that big body as well. And he is athletic. Like I don't know too many DBs in the NFL that could bat a ball away from him midair. You know, he's just that, you know, he's just that good, you know, and so on. But I see your perspective. The contract as well as a problem, you know, and sooner or later, if Tua is successful this year, they'd have to deal with that, you know, sooner rather than later, you know, in terms of franchise quarterback, if he is the future of the Dolphins. You know, I think this is Tua's tryout year. You know,
I agree.
If it doesn't work out for Tua, I do think the Dolphins, which by the way is a very good quarterback class coming out this year, so I do believe the Dolphins will be, you know, flirting with the possibility of another college athlete coming in.
Oh, you mean you're not in the camp that thinks that Skylar Thompson's ready to take over as a starting quarterback right now?
No, I'm not there. I'm not there. I think. Listen,
I'll say this though. I'll say this, and not to cut you off.
Of course.
I love what I've seen out of him, and let's, you know, we were saying about the salary cap situation, man. Teddy Bridgewater is making $6.5 million this year, and the fact that potentially, let's say Skylar Thompson develops, he's making $750,000. I mean, so like you go in the next year, that's $5.5 million, and I'm not sure what the second year salary is for a 7th round pick, but that $5.5 million difference under the salary cap for a backup quarterback is enormous, and it gives you so much flexibility in what you're able to do. There is a reason why they were okay exposing guys like River Craycraft and Braylon Sanders to other teams coming in and taking them for the sake of keeping Skylar Thompson. What he's shown is phenomenal. Not ready to take over for Tua. I mean, I don't think you need to get that crazy, but I mean, there's a real value, and I think that's I was going to say an underplayed aspect of this offseason, but I think it's starting to get enough play to where people are starting to appreciate just what a big pickup that was.
Yeah, I don't remember the 80s and 90s. How large the roster had to be, but it's not unusual to have 3 quarterbacks. The Dolphins did it for a while. They had Marino, they had Scott Seekels, and then Scott Mitchell, which I recall. So it's not that unusual. Right. I mean, people talking about 3 quarterback. I mean, it's not. I mean, and back then the game was harder. You had guys, you know, helmet to helmet was considered a good tackle. You know, so I don't think the 3 quarterback thing is such a big deal, in my opinion. And if you like him, keep him. You know, God knows what happened to Teddy Bridgewater if Tua goes down. You know, and by the way, Teddy Bridgewater has been prone to injury, you know, as well. So it's something to think about. And the guy's shined in the preseason, and we'll see how he does in the regular season with basically A-level talent coming at you. So that's pretty much the test for Skylar. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So again, going back to one of your takes on Hawk and Crowder. So I laughed, and I said when I have him on, I'm gonna rag on him a little bit, because you know how Mark Hockman loves to do the Mount Rushmores, you know, and so on. The Mount Rushmores. He did one, and I'm in the car. I was laughing so hard. He did one because it was Robert De Niro's birthday on the top 4 De Niro movies. Of all the De Niro classics, you pick all the Meet the Parents films. I was ready for you.
Maybe my sarcasm didn't come across quite as well. I did love him in Meet the Parents. I did love that. I love him in comedic roles. I love when you can see these guys that are like serious actors, and then you see their real chops as comic actors. And by the way, you see it the other way too. I mean, Adam Sandler has done some really good. Has given us some really good performances dramatically. So I kind of like seeing that crossover at times. But no, I mean, no, I don't think that, you know, Goodfellas and Taxi Driver are actually below Meet the Fockers and what were the Baby Fockers, Meet the Fockers, I think there were like 4 of them, 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, you
but
went.
I love I analyze this. I like to analyze this.
Yeah.
I like him in those roles.
Yeah.
But no, that doesn't take away from the De Niro that we saw in the classics. Raging Bull.
Yeah.
Those were great.
Yeah, if I was to pick, my movies would be, I'm a huge Godfather nerd, so
Yep.
it'd have to be his portrayal of Vito Corleone, be 1, and then Goodfellas, I'm a huge fan of that film. Number
Yep.
2. Number 3 would be The Untouchables. That was my first ever exposure to De Niro as an actor. I was a small child, and my parents took me to see The Untouchables. You know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you have therapy bills after that? They have to explain all that?
No, man. It's funny though. That's how I became a mob enthusiast. You know, when it came to the whole.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, man. That's how I became.
I'm Italian, so like.
That's right. You are.
Makes sense. Like, I love reading about Capone and.
Yeah, me too.
I don't love Capone. I love reading about the history of.
Trust me,
yeah,
I understand you.
Yeah.
I teach high school, and when I've had to explain the gangster era, I try to explain it like I'm not a fan. You know, so the kids look at me. They look at me like this. I'm like, no. I'm just explaining to you like the commission, all that stuff. You know, so it's really funny. So, but if I had to pick a comedy, I like Meet the Parents, of course, but I like Analyze This because I feel like sometimes Billy Crystal isn't as appreciated as a comedic actor. Yeah. As he should be, and I like Billy Crystal. My son, who's 2.5 years old, loves Monsters Inc., and I think Mike Wazowski's hilarious. So I feel like he's undervalued.
You know, that, like, how much would you have paid to be on the set with those two, with Billy Crystal? Like, you can bet that as funny as they were together, like that we saw on screen, there were 1,000 moments that they couldn't show us that were on the cutting room floor somewhere that were just hilarious. And so, yeah, I mean, I just 2 extremely talented guys, but yeah, you can't be Italian and not have a soft spot in your heart for a lot of the stuff De Niro has done. And no, Meet the Fockers is not up there.
When I heard you say it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so gonna bother him about that. I'm like, of all the films that De Niro's done, he picks the Ben Stiller films. And so, Clay, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. You coming on. I know you're a busy guy, and definitely with football season, getting started this upcoming Saturday, you know, with the Canes, and then the following week with the Dolphins. I know. I really appreciate you for coming on. I really do. Thank you so much.
Of course, man. Anytime. It was a blast.
Thank you. All right. Well, anyways, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you heard, all right, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and share to 305 Sports Now. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, please do not forget to download on Anchor, Google, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. All right. And let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, the goal is 1,000 subscribers by the end of September. Let's do this. We can do this, 305 family, right? Once again, for me, I am Will. Thank you once again, Mr. Clay Ferraro. All right. Have a safe day. God bless. See you soon.